these are all the most famous people. If he didn't know who they were, I looked them up so he gets to see these, all the people that made a difference in the world started out like him. He goes,
Yeah.
no one's ever talked to me like that. No one's ever told me like that. I said, well, if you hang out with people that see no options and limit their
Mhm.
options, well, you'll probably have a limited option life.
Welcome to another episode of Stillcast. This one has me having a little bit of butterflies because it's kind of like I'm interviewing a famous person, to me anyway, because I've been watching this guy for a little while and he's a big inspiration to the work that I do, a big inspiration behind the work I do with my clients. And I'm just, butterflies are surfacing in this moment, but we're managing and we're pulling through. So to give you a little bit of an intro to Dr. John Demartini, he's a human behavior expert. He's studied human behavior for a very, very long time, decades if I'm not mistaken. The thing that just really got me intrigued too is his history. When he was growing up, when he was a kid, he was told he wasn't going to amount to anything. Another part of this that's kind of fun to think about is he was born on Thanksgiving Day, which makes sense because a big part of this work is gratitude. So I don't know if that inspired you at all. I also know that we have a little bit of an abbreviated amount of time today, but he's gracious enough to be open to a part 2 if today goes well. So I hope it goes well. Dr. John Demartini, I'm so thankful for you to be here, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate you being patient, getting on. I was delayed getting on, but thank you.
It's all good. My first thought was, well, this guy does live on a boat and God knows where he is. Was that part of it or something else? Or
No. It required a Google link, and I kept hitting it instead of a capital. I tried different ways on it, and my number was off by a digit. And I was just sitting there.
okay.
So I finally got
Cool.
on Google. I'm usually I just go on a link, and I'm not used to using Google, and I had to remember my number on Google.
Okay, got it. So, generally speaking, when I do podcasts, like I don't have notes most of the time. I just fly off the cuff. But with someone like yourself, I just, I wrote some notes here. And so I know again that we have this short period of time. So this might be more of like an interview rapid fire kind of thing, but we'll go with it. So human behavior expert, tell me about like how that came to be and like, what does that title really mean to you and things of that nature?
Well, when I was 18 years old, I already knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be involved in teaching and healing and travel the world. That was something I
Right.
knew at 17. But at
Mm-hmm.
18, I was watching a show in America called Kung Fu with David Carradine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in
Vaguely,
there,
vaguely familiar.
yeah, and he's this martial artist guy that's kind of philosophical, and he had this Shaolin master that
Mm-hmm.
trained him, and he would flash back to when on his training and for his principles in this movie or in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought, wow, I'd like to be a master. Sounded
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I want to master life. And I started to research, how do we do that? And what exactly does that mean? And that led me to looking at the areas of life that people could master. And I found that most people want to develop their mind. They want to develop a career. They want to develop wealth. They want to develop a family, a social, physical health and well-being, and then do something inspirational. So I wrote out those 7 areas of life. And then I said, I'm going to go and research everything I can, as much as I can, and gather information that can help me and others master their life. Well, that kind of became human behavior in a nutshell. But that led me to study philosophy and healing and physiology and neurology and brain research. It just took me everywhere. But that's sort of what the bottom line boiled down to. When I was sitting with a branding company many years ago, they said, well, let's look at what you actually do so we can kind of target it. And that became the cornerstone. So I've been researching I've been teaching now. November will be the beginning of the 52nd year. So it'll be 51 years finishing up in November.
Dude.
So I've been doing it a while.
That's impressive.
I'll be 69 then. So I started at 18. I've been teaching, all these years. So, but anything to do with maximizing human awareness and potential, anything with empowering those 7 areas, anything that is involved in the development and involvement of maximizing human conscious awareness and potential, I love. And that's sort of what I've been working on all these years. I say if you do something long enough, sooner or later, everybody else kind of dies out and you end up somewhere.
Yeah, 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 right, right, right. I believe that. I know you talk a lot about, when you have something that you're doing that you're passionate about and you feel the purpose in, and you just take action with that, like, and there may be more to it, but that's like the general recipe. And more than ever I can relate to that now, and previous versions of myself would have never even been able to fathom what that is. And I started coining something that I just came up with, the triangle of belief. And I say at the top of the triangle is the openness to the belief in divinity. At the bottom right is your belief in your purpose. And the bottom left is the belief in yourself. If you work on the belief in yourself stuff, which encompasses a myriad of different things, the other two seem to grow and blossom in a way that you can't possibly fathom. Would you say that that's a close thing?
Well, I think that summarizes it beautifully. In the existential philosophy of what exactly is divinity.
Right.
Uh, Divinity could be a diva. Divi means light, embracing light, or whatever, the intelligence of the universe. Many ways of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that an enlightened individual is
Mm-hmm.
clear about what their purpose is and
Mm-hmm.
feels grateful for whatever's happening because they see it on the way, not in the way, and they feel that there's a purpose and almost a teleological aspect to life. And those people, my observation, have more fulfillment in life than people that are thinking it's all meaningless, it's pointless, there's no meaning to it. Who am I? I'm a dot in a massive universe. I'm insignificant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That may be true. We are a dot in the universe, but at the same time, we can make a difference right here on this little planet. And that gives
Yeah.
us meaning and purpose. And I think that's finding out what really is most valuable to us, that most inspiring, that makes the biggest difference, that in a sustainable, fair exchange manner with other people is something that brings tears of gratitude and makes us feel like we're part of something that's whole. And I think that triad you have is perfectly meaningful. So yeah.
Thank you very much. That means a great deal to me. So the way that I look at it is depending on the person, but for so many people, in order to like get to that, in order to discover what the purpose is, I mean, part of it is exploration for sure, but there's also a big part of it that's like you need to deconstruct and reconstruct your brain or your subconscious mind or however you want to frame it. Would you say that's accurate as well?
Well, it's interesting you're asking this question. I just got through producing a new product on defining and clarifying and your purpose in life just this morning. So it's kind
Oh,
of
oh, cool, cool,
real
cool.
fresh. But every human being, regardless of their gender spectrum, their age, or culture, lives moment by moment with a set of priorities and values, things that are most to least important in their lives. And
Mhm,
that set of priorities, particularly the highest values, highest priorities, dictate how they perceive, decide, and act. So their
mhm,
perception, decisions, and actions, their sensory neurons, interneurons, and motor neurons in the brain are functioning according to what they value most because they're filtering
mhm,
reality accordingly and they're acting
mhm,
in priority accordingly.
mhm,
So the hierarchy of one's values dictates the destiny, and it also dictates their ontological identity, who they believe they are, what their
mhm,
area of expertise, their epistemological mastery, and their teleological purpose. So I first start with what is highest on their values. I look at
mhm,
what they fill their space with most. I look at what they spend
mhm,
their time on most. I look at what energizes them most. I look at where they
mhm,
spend most of their money. I look at where they're most organized, most disciplined. I look at what they think about, visualize an internal dialogue with themselves about how they would live their
mhm,
life that shows evidence coming true most. I look at what they
mhm,
converse with other people about most, what it is that's most consistent in their goals and their objectives, that they don't ever stop, they just keep going and make it happen, and what is it they
mhm,
love learning about most. And that gives me a good filtering to look at what their life demonstrates is important, not their fantasies. Because a lot of people have
mhm,
fantasies about what they want and then bang their head against the wall
mhm.
and then they wonder, well, maybe the universe is against me here. But when
Yeah,
they
yeah.
go after something deeply meaningful, something that really is priority intrinsically, uh, amazing momentum starts building, and they become
Mhm, yeah,
unstoppable.
right.
They know what they're up to. They know why they're there, and I
So
think that's
I'm
starting there at the highest values where I start.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. Not to cut you off, but I feel that in my life. I see that in my life, but I also know previous versions of myself, couldn't even see it. Even if I came across you, I'd be like, yeah, what the fuck ever, and move on, right? So the thing that I see is that, take someone who, for example, I was speaking to someone recently, that is in school to become a nurse, right? And that's a beautiful profession. I'm not discounting the profession, but I was diving deeper with her and figuring out, when she was younger, what made her go that route. And, we talked about when she was 17, 18 years old, and all the thoughts come in of, or people talking to them like, so what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to study? Have you just figured out what you're going to do? There's this pressure, right? And so at that age, it's like, there's these quadrants. Am I going to be a nurse? Am I going to be a doctor, a lawyer, a construction, worker, something like that? And she wanted to help people innately and chose the nursing route because it made the most sense at that time. And in this day and age, she wants to find more happiness in her life, right? That's what her core drive is. But consciously, she looks at that as, how do I manage all these things and still keep the nursing thing going? Whereas I feel from the outside perspective, it's like, let's dive deeper into what is it about nursing? Again, not to discount the profession, but you can help people in a lot of different ways. And when I detect stress in someone, that's in a position like this and they're really bogged down by stuff, I see how I am with my work. This shit doesn't stress me out anymore. Not it never has, but previous careers that I was in, super high stress, depression, anxiety, and shit. It wasn't my passion. It wasn't my purpose. It wasn't what I was really aligned to do. And so that's why I feel like, some people, maybe it's easier. Some people, maybe, they didn't go through as much as a kid or something like that, and they can just switch and fucking tap into it. But other people, I feel like they're just so locked in their shell that they got to do the rewiring work to even fucking figure out what it is. That's my
Well,
opinion anyway.
their life demonstrates what's priority. If we look
Mm-hmm.
carefully at their life demonstrates it. But a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times we compare ourselves to others, inject the values of others into our life, cloud the clarity of what we feel called to do, and then lie to
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. But the reality is I'm afraid I don't know if I'm intelligent enough to pull it off. I don't know if I might fail at doing it, not succeed. I'm not sure if I can make enough money out of it to make a living out of it. I don't know what will
Mm-hmm.
happen with my family and what will they still love me or will they be able to manage a family or wife or kids. I'm not sure if I'll get rejected if I go this route. I don't know if I have the physical stamina or the looks to do it, or I don't know if it's morally the thing I'm to do according to what I was raised. And they've got all
Mm-hmm.
these injected values of outer authorities, these moral hypocrisies many times, making them live in the idea that, oh, because whenever we compare ourselves to other people and put them on pedestals, we minimize ourselves and we inject their values and we cloud the clarity of our own. And then we live with these
Mm-hmm.
anxieties and fears. And then we kind of avoid facing the truth about our life and come up with myths and false
Mm-hmm.
imposter scenarios about what we think we
And
want.
that's
But good,
unconsciously, right? Like that's
yeah,
unconscious stuff.
most people are not aware of it. When they come to my program, the Breakthrough Experience, I make them aware of it. And they go, whoa, and then they
Right.
identify who those authorities are, and then they
Mm-hmm.
realize, are those really the people I want as my authorities? It's a wake up call.
Right.
Most people don't
Yeah.
wake that up until their midlife crisis when they all of a sudden become the same age as the authorities they subordinated to. And then they go, why am I
Yeah.
giving them power? It's my
Yeah.
life. And
Right.
then they finally go, hey, I can do what I love to do in life. I was blessed
Yeah.
at 17 to find that. But some people
Yeah.
don't find that right away. They find it
Right.
much later. Some don't find it at
Yeah.
all. They live a
So
quiet life of desperation.
I think that that's a very fantastic point. If I'm not mistaken, as I understand it, in neuroplasticity, the older we get, the less malleable we can make these. It's more challenging to make the shifts, right? So I didn't
Well, we get
start
in our
until,
rut. We get habits.
yeah,
We get
right,
habits and beliefs.
deeply,
And they're not unchangeable. We can change them.
right.
I had a gentleman who is 73 who
Mhm.
had chronic fatigue syndrome. He got laid off from a big oil company, and he was basically went into kind of a chronic fatigue syndrome because he's like, who's ever going to want to hire me? But he never
Mhm.
gave himself permission to start his own company.
Mhm. Right,
He was an
right.
executive, but he never gave
Yeah,
himself, oh, I want to work for a company. So he
yeah,
came to my Breakthrough Experience program, and I kind of hit him with a sledgehammer. Poof.
yeah, yeah. Right, right,
I said,
right.
"So what's stopping you with all your years of experience in the industry? Why can't you be a consultant and start your own consulting company?" And the light bulb hit him.
Mhm.
And man, he came right out of his chronic fatigue and went out and started a new business at 70 something years old. He joined up, started
Yeah.
hiring people. He was on fire. By 76, he
Yeah.
said, I'm more on fire now than ever was working for another company. I'm now doing what I love to do, and my expertise is being appreciated. So you can
Yeah.
change it. It's just
Yeah.
it's less probable unless something catalyzes it.
Right. Right. Yes, exactly. Beautiful. Okay. So, considering the time scenario, I do want to dive into a couple quick questions for you, right? So, when it comes to the energy of words, right? Someone who says, "Well, I'm struggling with this," or "I got all these problems, and how am I going to fix this?" Right? Like, it's not that struggle itself is the devil's word or some shit. It's the energy behind the phrasing of the word, right? And so, like the people that I work with, if I catch them saying, "Well, I really struggled last week to do X," I'm always like, "Hey, this is a great opportunity to interrupt that pattern and reframe it to, you know what, last week was challenging, but I made it through and we're going forward." And then you work to basically create a new neurological pathway until it becomes stronger than the preceding. Would you say that that is
That
correct?
summarizes it. That's basic summary right there, because there's a basic proverb that's been handed down through the ages that if you don't fill your day with high priority actions that inspire you, it's going to fill up with low priority distractions that don't. If you don't
Mm-hmm.
fill your mind with the worded words that articulate what is deeply meaningful, your life will fill up with words that don't. And if you
Mm-hmm.
don't fill your time and your space and your energy, and you don't feed your mind the highest priority things, it fills up with
Mm-hmm.
stuff that's not inspiring. So yeah, taking command of your words was something the gentleman taught me when I was 17. He says, what you think about, what you visualize, what you affirm, what you feel, and what you act upon tells me where you're headed.
Right.
So
Right.
when somebody comes to me and said, well, I don't know what I want to do. I just ask them, is that your most inspiring affirmation you want to tell yourself every day? You go, no. So how would you love to talk to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I now know what I'm up to. I'm on a man on a mission. Great. Let's start there. And
Yeah.
let's start to ask ourselves, what really is our life demonstrating? Because if you sit and argue for your limitations are going to be yours, if you keep focusing on the problem and not focusing on what changes it, it's going to keep
Mm-hmm.
growing. So
Yeah.
it's the key is taking command of what you say and think and visualize and everything else. And that's always doable because we have command over those things. We can change our
Mm-hmm.
perceptions, our decisions, and our actions. And one of the actions is speaking. We have control
Mm-hmm.
over what we say. So we can do that and
Yeah.
change our life. Absolutely. I've said to
So,
myself, I said when I was 18 years old that the universe was my playground, the world is my home, every country is a room in the house, and every city is a platform to share my heart and soul. And I've said that a million times every day. And I live on a ship
dude.
called the world that goes all around the world. I look up the stars at
Yeah.
night, I see the universe, and I go to every
Yeah.
country and it's a room in my house because the world is my home today. And I share and
Right.
travel and teach. And so that statement is my life today. My innermost dominant
Yeah.
thought becomes my outermost tangible reality. And what I say to myself and think for myself is where I go.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So all the different books out there on the subconscious mind, I always find a common thread there. It's basically, if someone feels that their life is in disarray, the depression, anxiety, whatever, the subconscious mind is set up in a certain way because of the limiting beliefs that were fed to them throughout their life. So at the moment, you could look at it and say the subconscious mind is to the detriment of the person, but they have the ability to shift it, to rewire it, to get to that space where you're at. And I do think that yes, you were blessed, right, to be able to begin that work at age 17. And I have people I work with that are in that age group, and I'm always telling them, you have no idea how blessed you are to be starting this journey right now. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, the thing is, even the subconscious mind, when it has all these different programs that we think are error, ultimately they're creating chaos and stress and distractions and frustrations to get us back to what's authentic. So
Mm-hmm.
that is still not an error. It's just not interpreted. I always say that, our fear is letting us know when we're holding on to fantasies and when
Mm-hmm.
we're not
Yeah.
being congruent with what we're really up to and what's really
Mm-hmm.
meaningful to us. So it's not an enemy. It's actually a feedback if it's interpreted wisely. And it's the quality
Right.
of our life based on the quality of the questions we ask. If we have amazing questions and we start to see life on the way, not in the way, then nothing really blocks us. When somebody
Mm-hmm.
said, I had a young boy and he said, he was kind of moping and he said, I was an abandoned child, and
Mhm.
I was given up as an orphan. And
Mhm.
I said, do you know how to use the internet? He goes, yeah. He says, fantastic. Let's go on the internet. He goes,
Mhm.
okay. He's kind of puzzled, right? I
Mhm.
said, let's look up the most famous people, all the famous people that were orphans and were abandoned. And we
Mhm.
found 700 celebrities and famous people that made marks in the world. And I said,
Wow,
you're gifted. You're gifted. You're in this category. And he goes, whoa, reframe, reframe.
dude,
Sir
that's the
Isaac
stuff.
Newton's father died on his when he was born, the day he was born. His mom then had to leave him for a long time to try to find a guy to be able to pay for things because she didn't have a way of making income. And
Yeah.
so she was left he was left with somebody else. And so he became kind of a reclusive guy that lived in books. And he became the guy that wrote Principia, one of the greatest scientific treatises on gravity in the world. So he was started out that way. And so I just went down the list of all these people, and he goes, these are all the most famous people. If he didn't know who they were, I looked them up so he gets to see these all the people that made a difference in the world started out like him. He goes,
Yeah.
no one's ever talked to me like that. No one's ever told me like that. I said, well, if you hang out with people that see no options and limit their
Mhm.
options, well, you'll probably have a limited option life. But right now,
Yeah.
you have a vast universe sitting in front of you. You can do extraordinary things if you see things on the way, not in the way.
Dude, I would just real quick touch on that. I love that. It's all beautiful. There are so many what I would previously historically refer to as cliche phrases out there, like what you think you become, whether you think you can't, you're right, all those things that like previous versions of myself was like, get the fuck out of here. So a guy got some money and he started saying some stuff and people were listening to him, you know. But now the further along I go, the more I'm like, no, no, no. There's actually stuff in all of this. You just have to like find it for yourself, but it's completely there. And my big push, what I talk about a lot is just simply the broad picture of the science of happiness. If you're not happy, you can become happy scientifically by rewiring your brain. I just try to make it
Yeah,
super simple, super
yeah.
simple. If that opens it, hey, let's go deeper. Let's dive deeper. And that's why Dr. John's here.
Well, if we don't design our life, nobody else is getting up in the morning dedicated to our fulfillment. So if we're not taking command of it, we got nobody to look at except us. Nobody,
Yeah.
if you look carefully, everybody is living with their own unique set of values. They're projecting those values onto us, trying to get them to be fulfilled. And if you don't know
Yeah.
how to take command of your own and be able to learn how whatever they're doing is how it's serving that, you're going to probably be a victim of history, not a master of destiny. But if you
Yeah.
ask the quality questions, how's whatever is happening in my life, no matter what it is, how's it helping me get my mission? And what
Hmm.
exactly is it my life demonstrating congruently on where I want to go? What is it I really do? Start with what you know and let what you know grow. If you start with what you
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
know and what life demonstrates, you'll build momentum. I knew
Yeah.
that I wanted to travel the world at 17. I knew that I wanted
Yeah.
to overcome my learning problems and become able to read and to be able to articulate because I was born with a speech impediment and I couldn't read.
Hmm.
So I knew I
Yeah.
wanted to overcome that. And I set out to do it. And I had to start reading a dictionary and memorizing words out of a dictionary every day before I could learn how to read a book. But I didn't stop. I just did a little bit every day. Piggy banks
Yeah.
become biggie banks. Little actions make big dreams. If you keep putting into your forebrain what it is that's really important to you and define that. And don't wait for other
Yeah.
people to define it. You define it. What it is you really want to create your life about.
Yeah. So I feel compelled to just say this real quick. Not that, you know, whatever. I want to say that your journey, I don't mean to discount because you started earlier that you had it easier. And I know that you didn't take it that way, but the thought just came to me this because you went down that road. You know, you're a great example of this because you're the first grade teacher told your parents you weren't going to amount to shit and like went down the road of you're not going to read, you're not going to learn, you're not going to fucking do anything, you know? And for most people, when their parents get that at that age, dude, that's fucking going all in the subconscious mind. And they're probably not going to get to where you got, but you shifted and you did the work. And that's fucking beautiful, man. And I commend you for that.
Well, I left school. I was a street kid from 13 to 18.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I met a guy named Paul Bragg one night at
Mm-hmm.
November 18th, 1972, at a little
Mm-hmm.
yoga class that I attended.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy said things to me that I'd never heard before. And he
Mm-hmm.
kind of woke me up a bit. And that's when it
Mm-hmm.
changed. If I had
Mm-hmm.
not had that experience meeting with him, I probably would be making surfboards in Hawaii today,
Yeah,
which
right.
is perfectly
Wait,
great too.
not a bad
That
gig
turned out to
though.
be a pretty
Not a
good
bad
business
gig,
too. But
you know.
I didn't know I could read until I was 18.
I lost you just for a second there. Okay, so I know we're tight, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into the words, if you don't mind, right? So, what about, this all ties together, but the idea of judgment. I always talk to people about practicing awareness, and not always specifically judgment, but this is something that I wanted to talk to you about. Practicing awareness of what we're saying, how we're framing things, how we're reacting, all that stuff, shifting all those things. The moments that we catch ourselves either judging ourselves or judging others, it's basically the same fucking thing. And when you use words in that, like audible words, it makes it more powerful. So first off, I'm assuming that you would agree with that. But then the deeper thing that I wanted to inquire with you is, have you found any science that you've seen that shows that, someone who is judging others, it's having a negative effect on their neurological network?
Well, anytime you put people on a pedestal and exaggerate them and are conscious of their upsides, but unconscious of their downsides and exaggerate them, you're going to minimize yourself and you'll be conscious of your downsides and unconscious of your upsides by comparison, by the law of contrast. When you do, anytime you do that, your subjective subconscious mind, the amygdala and the hippocampus, the amygdala assigns valency, stores that judgment in the hippocampus as a memory, and then you now run that memory, because every time or anybody that reminds you of that individual that you put on a pedestal, you'll keep feeling low to yourself. So there's a physiological mechanism of how judgment affects your physiology and keeps you you might say, in bondage to the misperceptions you have. If you look down on somebody and exaggerate yourself and are too proud to admit what you see in them is inside you, and see the negatives in them and not the positives, and see the positives in you, not the negatives, same thing occurs, same amygdala, same hippocampus, but both of those are subjectively misinterpretations of who you are. So you have an imposter, and interpretations of them. So you have an imposter idea who these people are and who you are. And now you've got them above you or below you. Whenever you have people above you, you inject their values and cloud yours. Whenever you have them below you, you project your values and try to get them to live in your values, both of which are futile. So there's no way you can maximize your potential with the emptiness that occurs when you're too proud or too humble to admit what you see in others inside you. We're here to love. We're here to have reflective awareness. We're here to have an affirmative mind of thank you, I love you to people, where we're saying that to them, but we're really saying it to the parts of us that we're reflecting. And the moment we do, we empower our life. So Empedocles, 600 BC, said there's love and strife. And strife is the judgment, and love is the path. If you're doing what you love and loving what you do and loving people along the way and loving your life is absolutely momentous. And that's basically the quality of the questions we ask. No matter what happened in my life, how did it help me fulfill what's meaningful to me? And how do I see both sides simultaneously? Wilhelm Wundt in 1895, the father of experimental psychology, said, when we can see simultaneous contrast, not sequential contrast, we end up mastering our life, which means instead of seeing them on a pedestal and minimizing yourself, you see both sides of them, you see both sides of you, you embrace both sides and love it. Most people are trying to get rid of half their life or trying to get rid of half of other people's lives instead of embracing all of ourselves and others with our heart. That's where we maximize our potential.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Well, I don't know how much longer we have, man, but I want to ask you one more question for sure. Okay. So do we have 10 more minutes, or what do you think?
Yeah, we've got about 15 minutes.
Sweet. All right. So self-talk is a massive part of this, obviously, right? And I've looked into the science where audible self-talk is more powerful than internal, but not to take away from the power of internal. I've done a lot of self-talk work in my life, as well in the recent years, as well as with clients. But a recent shift for me, I used to be massively resistant to, but I'm finally more on board with it, and I'm tapping into it. But I wanted your opinion on it, and that is specific, intentional inner child work in terms of talking to the inner child version of yourself. Have you seen any studies around that? Are you into it? Do you not have an opinion? I'm just curious.
Well, I'm a firm believer that whatever that wound is back there in your inner child, whatever you think that somehow is an error, I go back and ask the question, so what happened? Let me give you an example. So I had a lady that was in Florida, and she basically believed that she was also abandoned and she was worthless and she ended up going out with guys that treated her that way. She treated
Mm-hmm.
herself that way. She ended up having sexual issues with men and got raped and many other things, and was just going down this path. And she kept running this story that, my mom didn't left me and I was worthless and nobody wanted me and all this other stuff. And I said, so go to the moment when you first perceived your mom leaving you. She goes,
Mm-hmm.
okay. I said, who wanted you at that moment? Nobody. I said, look again.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, oh, my aunt. Yeah, my sister's mom. She took me over. And then all of a sudden she remembered something. She had this huge catharsis all of a sudden. I said, what is it? She goes, something my aunt said that I never could put together until just now.
Hmm.
What did she say? She says, my aunt said that my mom was bipolar. And she started crying. And I said, what is it? The whole room was waiting because there's a group of people in the room.
Mm.
It says, my mother, wow, she was bathing me. She forgot I was in the hot water in the tub, and the tub kept filling up, and I almost drowned. And my mom said to my aunt, her sister, said, I don't feel I'm stable enough to be able to take care of the daughter I love. Will you help me? So she
Mm.
didn't abandon her after all. She gave her away
Oh,
because she
wow.
didn't feel she could help her. She thought she
Yeah.
might end up killing her own daughter. She says, I scared myself. I almost killed my own daughter I love. When she
Right. Right.
remembered that, her whole program went from I was worthless, that I'm special, my mom loved me, to make sure I had the better deal. Then I said, so whatever you thought you missed from your mom, who provided it? My aunt,
Mm-hmm.
my grandmother, my teacher,
Mm-hmm.
my best friend's mom. What were the
Mm-hmm.
benefits of them doing it? And she goes, well, I got an opportunity. I learned a different language. I got to travel. And what would have been the drawback if your mom had done it? I would have probably had chaos. I probably would have had to rescue her and keep her going because she was sick.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she just bawled and she says, my mom loved me after all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not
Yeah.
a wasted child. So
Yeah.
because if you go back there and ask a new set of questions and see things from a different perspective, that so-called child wound can turn into a child opportunity. I had the same thing happen with a boy that was in Australia. He was eating his nails bleeding nails. And I
Mm-hmm.
regressed him back to his birth. We found
Mm-hmm.
out that his mother was from India. He was an Indian boy, taken
Mm-hmm.
over by a foster Australian woman.
Mm-hmm.
And when he woke up his eyes after he was sitting in a bassinet, like a day after he was born,
Mm-hmm.
he all of a sudden opened his eyes, saw his mom at the window looking in, crying, with the father taking her away, and found
Mm-hmm.
out, did a little homework and found out that their mom and dad came from the slums of Mumbai and felt that this child was a gifted child and he deserved a better life than they could ever offer him. So they gave him
Mm-hmm.
up for adoption or foster to give him an opportunity. The moment he discovered and reawoke that and saw that in his mind, his mom crying and didn't want to leave him, that kid went on to excel in school. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just take off in school and made sure. And then he was going to do something great. When he actually accomplished his degree and went out and did something, he was going to find his mom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not what happens to us. It's
Right.
our perceptions, the decisions we make, and the actions we take as a result of it. Because there's nothing out there, as Milton said, we can make a heaven out of a hell or a hell out of a heaven. It's all the way we perceive it. And if
Right.
we ask new questions and become conscious of what we've been unconscious of, the upsides to what we think are downsides, we can turn it into an incredible opportunity. I mean, Oprah came from an incested childhood.
Sure.
She went on to
Sure.
do amazing things to transform millions of people's lives. So it's not what
Yeah.
happens to us; it's what we decide to do. And we can become
Beautiful.
victims of that history if we want to run that story and run that old program. But we can also become a
Yeah.
master of destiny if we take command of the program and turn it into an opportunity. So what we say
Right.
does have an impact on our destiny and how we
Yeah.
reframe what we see, what we experience in our life. Because if you can't say thank you for anything in your life, it's baggage. But once you say thank you, it's fuel.
Yeah, you just got to keep doing it. So the one quick tie onto that. So someone who maybe the it didn't come that quickly. Maybe it was someone that abused them throughout their life or whatever, and it's like deeper potentially or whatever. Sometimes it just takes more consistent, like just going back there and asking the questions or addressing
Yeah,
that
but
aspect of yourself
in
and just
that
continuing
moment,
to do it.
nothing's missing. I always say at the level of
Mm-hmm.
the soul, nothing's missing in us. At the level of our senses, things appear to be missing. The things that we appear to
Mm-hmm.
be missing are all the judgments that we have incomplete awareness around. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what gets stored in our subconscious mind. Once we see both sides of it, it goes into the superconscious mind. And the
Mm-hmm.
superconscious mind can take command and do extraordinary things. The subconscious mind is just an automaton reacting to the stuff we put in it. But the
Mm-hmm.
superconscious mind takes command, balances out the equation, and sees things on the way and allows it to go and build momentum to do something amazing. So I don't know if I always say there's nothing the mortal body can experience that the mortal soul can't love.
Right, right. I'm with that. I get that. I know that might be people were resistant to it, but we're pressed for time. Super conscious, because I would love to go down that road for a second and transmute that. But super conscious, is that like the consciousness or quantum field source, or is that when you reach an enlightened state? What is super consciousness?
Well, when you see the hidden order in the apparent chaos and all of a sudden get an aha, gamma synchronicity in the brain, and all of a sudden you see both sides of an event and it's not bad or good, it's neither, it transcends it, it's metaethical.
Mm-hmm.
Then simultaneously in that moment you enter into the superconscious mind. The superconscious mind is like a superposition in quantum field. If you take and collapse the wave function, you get a positive or a negative. But if you
Mm-hmm.
superpose them, you get both simultaneously, and you have
Okay.
access to the synthesis of those.
Okay.
As Zeno said in his dialectics, if you take a proposition and the opposite proposition, you put them together, you get a synthesis, and the synthesis is where the power is. That's the spiritual path for an individual. That's the middle path. That's the state of enlightenment of the Buddha, or the Taoist path. It transcends the parts and the judgments of one side or the other. When we label something good or bad, we get trapped. When we label something an act of love, we get liberated. So
Mm-hmm.
knowing how to ask the question that you've been blind to. If you're infatuated, you're blind to the downside. If you're resentful, you're blind to the upside. If you ask the questions to get you to see the side you're ignoring and blind to, and you see the whole thing and you're mindful, you don't have a
Mm-hmm.
reaction that holds you back. There's no subconscious mind that's running you anymore. In that moment,
Mm-hmm.
on that issue, you're now
Mm-hmm.
liberated to see the superconscious awareness, the hidden order there. And now you're saying thank you. Whenever you see the order,
Mm-hmm.
you go, boom, thank you, grace. The
Yeah.
brain gives you a tear of gratitude to know you're on track. Now you're seeing things as they actually are, not how you held in your mind and your subconscious.
Would you say that there are levels and that you still yourself even reach new levels?
Yeah, there's no end to the
Okay.
levels of growth. You know,
Okay.
they say Socrates was considered the wise man, right? But he knew
Mhm.
how little he knew.
Yeah, yeah. Right, right,
Because
right, right,
whatever
right.
we know, whatever's outside it is always infinite, and whatever we know is always finite. So the infinite far exceeds the finite. So the more we know, we don't know, and the more humble we
Yeah.
are, and the more we actually don't react and judge people, the more we just love people because we realize, who are we to be judging them?
Yeah, 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 right. Well, so the level thing, would you describe them also as like lens shifts? Like you'll reach a new level and it's like, holy shit, the world just shifted a little bit. It's different. It's better
Yeah,
or something like
yeah.
that. Okay.
You could call them quantum shifts. You could call them new paradigms. You could call them breaking a glass ceiling. There's 1,000 references and metaphors for breaking through new paradigms, new mansions of thinking, new realms of thought, new ways of looking
Yeah.
at it. All of those are, as far as I'm concerned, synonyms for the same level of seeing beyond the judgment.
Beautiful. Beautiful. John. All right. I would love it if you hung tight for just 2 minutes and I'll end this and we'll talk for just 2 minutes. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Beautiful, beautiful. John, thank you so much for being here. Guys, thank you so much for listening to this. I hope you take in what this man says because he's been studying this shit for a while and I've experienced it in my life and so have many of my clients and many of his clients. Check out his webpage real quick. Dr. John Demartini, what's the webpage they should go to?
Just drdemartini.com.
Beautiful, simple and easy. Check this man out. Holy shit, is he a ray of sunshine and a fountain of knowledge. Until next time.